going live.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our final meeting of the SRO Exploratory Committee. I will call the meeting to order at 6:32 and ask that for the benefit of any members of the public who may be tuning in, if we could go around and introduce ourselves. I will start. My name is Lisa Loomis and I'm a member of the Board of Education.
Mr. John Polino, regular member, Board of Education. Thank you.
Sergeant Bill Porter with the Middletown Police Special Investigations Unit.
Diana Martinez, I'm here as a community member.
Molly Anger, I'm here as a community member.
Roger Hart, I'm sorry, Cheryl.
Go ahead, Roger.
Okay. Roger Hart, I'm here as a community member.
And Cheryl Gonzalez, principal of Woodrow Wilson Middle School, soon to be Beeman.
Good evening, Jen. Oh, go ahead, Roberta.
Sorry. Roberta Downer, chemistry teacher, Middletown High School, MFT member.
Jen.
Hi, folks. Justin Carbonella, the Youth Services Director for the City of Middletown and parent.
Beverly Lawrence, community member. Hi. I'm Dolores Ford, teacher, Lawrence School.
Is that everybody?
Michael Timbrow, acting chief of police.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. All right, so the next piece is voting on approval of the minutes from 6:14. I hope you had a chance to review those. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? What is Bill? Bill, are you talking? You're on mute.
Thank you for recognizing me. I was on mute. I would like to just offer, if anything, a friendly amendment. I wasn't here present at the last meeting. But there was some discussion regarding Connecticut Voices. And I just wanted to bring up that, the academic performances as measured, I know it was stated based on hearing and reviewing the meeting, the academic performance as measured by average test scores on smarter balanced test scores also did not differ significantly based on the presence of SROs. And I don't think that point was made clear. I think it was more slanted against the SRO. And the research from 2015, 2016 in that report didn't really point that out. So I wanted to make that point.
So
there are some other things that I bring up, but it really doesn't have to do with the minutes of the previous meeting.
okay, so the SBAC scores did not differ.
Correct. It was the academic performance as measured. This is from them. And I don't believe it was read this way last time. The academic performance is measured by average test scores on the SBAC or test scores.
If everyone else can mute, I think that might be Molly.
I'll read it again. Academic performance as measured by average test scores on smarter balanced test scores also did not differ significantly based on the presence of SROs. And again, I'll mention the date. It was 2015 and 2016. That was quite a while back. The other issue I would point out is, I believe one of our members brought up that we may be enforcing policy violations at the school, and we don't. We've been following the correct response guidelines, and we allow the staff members to handle minor school infractions before police get involved. So these things all came up. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the meeting last time and voice the counterpoint from the police side. So that's about it.
I can note those things in the minutes with that friendly amendment. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion, Lisa.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of approving those minutes with that friendly amendment?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So those minutes are approved. And to review our norms, we agreed on welcoming all voices, listening to understand, and recognizing that we're discussing people and systems as separate things. And the next item on the agenda is discussion before voting on these recommendations. Acting Chief Timbrow did want to say a few words to the committee. So I will, oh, I'm sorry, yes. We did get word before we move on to the new business part of the agenda. We did get word of a tragic accident that has claimed the life of one of our former Middletown students. And we would like to take a moment of silence now to honor that student. Thank you, everyone. Our new business, hold on. Our new business is discussion, and I would like to give the floor first to Acting Chief Timbrow.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you, Lisa, and thank you to the panel for allowing me to just say a few words. I've been getting countless texts and phone calls from many parents, and they're concerned about the discussion or the thought, I guess, of removal of the SROs from our schools. So I just felt it important for the committee, to hear from me. I know Sergeant Porter has been the voice for the PD, and he's intimately involved with the SRO. So that's why he's in there in the position to speak on it, because he has even more information than I do. But however, I just wanted to say that for me, I've been a police officer for 26 years in town, and I had, my kids are grown, but they did all go through the school system and back when there wasn't SROs in the school. However, for us today in policing, everybody knows that community relations is of the utmost importance, and the SROs are invaluable to us to building relationships with our youth in the city. It gives us a chance to interact with the youth and the children, particularly even more so in the elementary schools, which we just started a few years ago. But it allows us to interact with the children at a young age, and where before they may have impressions or before, unfortunately, maybe the first time they met an officer is in a crisis when their family is calling or domestic violence incident and they're scared and they're, already shaken. So it really gives us the opportunity to build those relationships. And real briefly, I'll speak of my own personal experience. About 10 years ago or so, I got involved in the mentoring program in Middletown, and I would go to an elementary school and mentor a student. And the first few times I went to the school, the kids were all, like, oh, wow, what are the police doing here? And I got, like just the look of surprise. And, some of them were probably scared, who knows? But as I went there weekly, and I just spent an hour with the student I was mentoring, and it was during lunchtime, so it was during recess time, and the interactions that I was able to have with not only my mentee but the other children in the school was just phenomenal. And by, I would say, the 3 or 4 month mark, the kids were wondering where Officer Timbrow was. Why isn't he here today? And they were actually looking forward to it. So that's just my own personal experience on a small scale with the mentoring. But in addition to building the relationships which are invaluable, I have gotten nothing but positive feedback from parents, teachers, and students themselves. And we've also had crimes brought to our attention within the past few years that serious crimes against children that we may never have otherwise known about had not a student felt comfortable with going to one of our SROs and reporting something that they were aware of. So there's many benefits to it. And I understand that there may be some students that are uncomfortable, or for whatever reason. I've heard that brought up, and I would just suggest that a good solution to that, in my opinion, would be to meet with a group of students and their parents, teachers, counselors, whoever is deemed appropriate, and discuss their concerns if they're comfortable enough to do that with our SROs present. We've done that in the past. Years ago, we did have a parent information session, and students were also invited, and we just discussed the SRO program, and Chief McKenna was involved in that. So I just wanted to get on and just let you hear it from me as the acting chief. I fully support the program. It is 100% funded by the PD, by the police budget. It's a considerable amount. I mean, it's salaries for 6 officers for 10 months out of the year, plus whatever extra events they may participate in is totally funded by the police budget. But it's well worth it. And again, it's just invaluable, I believe, to building our relationships with the youth in our communities. So I understand there's some concerns about the MOU being dated. And real quickly, I'll just speak to that. The MOU was signed in 2014. I believe it was based on the right response model that came out of the Office of Policy Management. And I mean, I guess one way I look at that is, well, the program's been successful, so there hasn't been a need to revisit the MOU, which I know it says it will be looked at yearly. If there was concerns, or now that it's been brought to light, I will certainly be willing to sit down with, and our people and Dr. Connor and the Board of Ed and just discuss, updating the MOU to make it more current. But from everything the feedback I get, the model's working. Like Sergeant Porter says, we don't get involved in school-based offenses. We have our SROs have a strict protocol that they follow for, to make referrals if that's a last resort. And again, I just want to reiterate my complete support for the program. I thank you all for, looking into this, and if nothing else, bringing it to light that, we do have to look at some things and maybe revamp the MOU. But I just, like I said, I just thank you for allowing me to go on record and just give my support to the SRO program.
Thank you, Chief Timbrow. Does anyone have any questions while we have the acting chief here?
Chief, I'll just add to what the chief said. If we were to move forward on an MOU, I would look to get the right response placed as a foundation, that right response chart that we had used as a foundation to the MOU, because it's been successful and it does delineate who does what in the schools and takes the SROs away from minor school policy violations, and puts the staff members up first. But I also want to add that, there's been a lot of generalities about our program here, and it's not. I think our program is unique. We have a great relationship with our administrations. They can call me at any time. They know they have one person at the PD. They know they can go directly to their SRO. So we've built those relationships as well, and it's really been successful. We're all just phone calls away, where the SROs are adjuncts to each school. And again, I'm inside, so they can reach out to me anytime for police policy things if they wanted to update things or have a meeting regarding what plans were ahead for the SROs. That's about it. I just wanted to add some of that material.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Questions or comments? Then I'd like to open the floor for other discussion if there are questions about the recommendations or comments about the recommendations, or other matters that people would like to bring up for discussion.
Hi, Lisa. It's just a wondering, there are a lot of recommendations, and I'm just wondering, with such a small group of us tonight voting, or a small group on the committee, I'm wondering if we shouldn't consolidate or reduce some of the recommendations to 5 versus, I believe there's 11. Just a thought, wondering what the other committee members are thinking about.
I agree with you, Jen.
Through the chair, I also agree.
What does the size of our group? I'm not sure.
Sure. So I'm just, how many of us are voting tonight? 8 possibly. So let's just say each person votes for an individual proposal to get a consensus or to get a majority to vote for something to bring to the board might be challenging. I'm not saying that's going to happen. Maybe we'll look at it after we vote. But if all of us lie on one proposal, we might not have a consensus.
So I'm sorry if I wasn't more clear about the process. So a couple of these recommendations are mutually exclusive. It doesn't make sense to vote to keep the program as is and to vote to remove the program. But there are multiple recommendations that could go together. So it's not going to be that you just have to vote for one. You can vote for as many or as few as you want.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Diana, I saw your hand up.
No, but you answered my question. I was going to ask about what the voting process was. And then are we looking for majority consensus, or are we looking for something different?
So I will share the entire vote count on all of the recommendations with the Board of Education, and the full board can decide how it would like to move forward, if that makes sense. Molly?
If we were unable to think of something to add to the list, but we come up with it tonight, is that okay?
I don't think so. People have had this list for almost a week. and they've had time to think about and process. I don't want to put something before people that they haven't had enough time to consider. Any other questions or items for discussion? Well, before we vote, I have a statement that I would like to read to explain the votes that I'm going to be making. And if anyone else wants to do the same, they may, but I don't see other hands. So it looks like now is my time. And I want to start by saying, we're going back to our norm of separating people and systems. By all accounts that we've heard, the SROs who are currently in the schools are great people who are really committed to building relationships with students and are doing a good job at that. And I appreciate Sergeant Porter's willingness to be a part of this committee and work together with us on this. But my concerns do lie not with the people right now, but with the system that we have in place. And so I've heard a lot of people say that, like, why are we even having this discussion? They don't see any reason why this committee was established. But the fact is that most districts in our state do not have SROs. And of those districts that do, most of them are not stationed in elementary schools, they're in middle and high schools. So I hear a lot of people saying we need SROs. Sorry, that's what happens when you're outside, I guess. So a lot of adults are saying we need the SROs, but the fact is that many districts are getting by without them. And I work for Hartford Public Schools, and we don't have SROs there. I've heard a number of parents say they want SROs in our high school to manage fights, but I've been pleased to hear broad agreement from Sergeant Porter and from the SROs and the teachers and the admin. And it came up again tonight that the SROs aren't in our schools to police our children. They're not in our schools to discipline our children. And so one thing that's come up throughout the course of this committee is what is the role of the SRO? And what we've heard a lot is that the role is to support students through building positive relationships. And it seems to me that social workers and psychologists are better suited for that work. So the question of what is the role of the SRO and should we have SROs, what we've heard, the word that's come up over and over and over again is safety. And what we've heard is that different people have opposing ideas about what school safety is and how to achieve it. I've heard a lot of parents say they feel safer with the SROs in our schools to protect our kids against external threats. But if you research, do SROs prevent school shootings? The overwhelming evidence is that they do not. There was a study published just in February of this year, 2021, researchers looked at 133 incidents that occurred between 1980 and 2019, in which at least one person was intentionally shot in a school or a person arrived at a school heavily armed. 85% of the shooters were current or former students under the age of 21. And an armed guard was on the scene in almost a quarter of the cases. They found the rate of deaths were almost 3 times higher in schools with an armed guard present. And their explanation for why that was that the shooter may come knowing that there's an armed guard, they may come more heavily armed. And also, since many of the school shooters are suicidal students, having an armed guard there is an incentive for them, not a deterrent. In an interview, Tom Moen, a criminal justice researcher at Bowling Green State University, said, quote, "For someone to suggest that SROs prevent school shootings is absolutely unfounded in terms of science. There's no support for that statement at all." Matthew Mayer, a professor at Rutgers who studies violence in schools, said, quote, "We don't have any rigorous causal evidence that says armed guards reduce school shootings or school violence." So based on the studies that show the presence of armed guards makes students feel less safe and has the potential to harm the learning environment, the National Association of School Psychologists cautions against the use of SROs and instead recommends providing a continuum of services that improve students' well-being. The fact that school shooters are most likely to be suicidal students underscores the fact that having more mental health professionals in our schools would be more effective in promoting school safety than having SROs. And Every Town for Gun Safety has published a comprehensive plan for preventing school shootings. It does not recommend having SROs, but it does recommend providing enough mental health professionals to ensure students' needs are being met. If you recall, we had a student tell us that he had to wait 3 months to be seen at the Middletown High Health Center when he needed mental health supports. The only resources that I have found that say SROs improve school safety, including the study that Sergeant Porter shared with us and another that was shared with me by a parent, are not studies by independent researchers, but rather reports and research from law enforcement organizations, which obviously are interested in continuing SRO programs. I've heard Mr. Hart say he worked in a community that ended its SRO program because it wasn't working well and then restarted it later. And I wonder what, if any, systems were put in place to support school safety and student well-being in the wake of removing SROs. Mr. Giuliani called in and said the same thing happened in Middletown. And I have the same question. If people are concerned about creating a vacuum with removing the SROs, that doesn't mean necessarily that we shouldn't remove them, but there does need to be thought about what would take their place. I hear adults saying they feel better with having SROs in schools, but the evidence available to me suggests that SROs create an illusion of increased school safety while contributing to an environment of fear for students. I've heard adults say this program is working, and my question is one that echoes a question in a previous meeting. By what measure is the program working? We have never really defined what success for this program is. About 10 years ago, we were among the top 10 high schools in the state for arrests, and that rate has gone down, which is great. But has it gone down because of the SRO program, or has it gone down because of our increased adoption of restorative justice practices, because of the use of the diversion program through youth services, and the PBIS program and partnership with CT Rise, all of these other things that we've been doing the last few years? And all of these things are more clearly aligned with our goal of improving equity in our schools. I've heard people say having SROs in our schools has reduced arrests because the SROs know the students, so they are less likely to arrest them. That tells me it isn't our students who need to have relationships with officers, but our officers who need to have relationships with students. And if that's the case, given the research that says officers do not increase school safety, given the evidence that having armed officers in schools makes many of our students feel less safe, it seems to me that the PD should be finding ways to improve officers' relationships with youth, but doing that outside of our schools. If we were going to listen to school safety experts, we would remove officers from our schools, and I will be voting for that. But many in our community are not ready to do that. So I will also be voting for other reforms, because I think there are some reforms that we can find some common ground on that Chief Timbrow mentioned earlier in his statement. And so whatever reforms we can make at this point are better than nothing. So that's why I will be voting as I will be voting, and I'll open the floor for other comments. Yes, Sergeant Porter.
I'm ready for a counterpoint, if you will. I appreciate your commentary. I don't agree with it. The research can go either way. You can say one point and I'll present a counterpoint. Your points with this gentleman from Bowling Green is just that. It's someone from out of state. I can go and do a nationwide search and find someone that will provide me a counterpoint and other evidence, as you mentioned, evidence that you're looking at that will go in the opposite direction. You brought up the point about the youth that sat in the health services area for 3 months. That's not a breakdown of the SRO program. That's a breakdown of a school system. So that's something that's alarming and should be researched. All things are considered. How did our arrests go down? I think it's a culmination of everything. I don't think it's just the SROs in the school. So I think it's our restorative justice practices. I think that reversing arrests by those completing the program assists in that regard. And certainly new reforms on the horizon. I would caution on one last thing, because we're in a public forum here. This is being broadcast. I think it's dangerous to publicly announce that you're seeking to remove the SROs from the school. If I'm a terrorist, domestic or foreign, my ears are perking up. So I think you're putting, not you, the system, if you will, is putting us in a situation where the Middletown Public Schools will have a huge amount of liability. My vote is for keeping the SRO program in effect with all SROs in the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school. They rove through through all schools, and sit down, between the chief and the superintendent and establish a new memorandum of understanding between both groups. It's due, and we could certainly incorporate some of the new reform issues into the MOU, but I think pulling the police out of the school systems, I think, is a dangerous precedent, especially to put out on this public forum. So my vote is for the SROs to stay and to sign into a new memorandum of understanding. Thank you.
Any other comments, statements? Yeah. Yes.
I too will be voting to keep the SROs in all of the schools, along with signing a memorandum of understanding. I do think there is value to the SROs, and we did not hear from any students who said that. We've heard adults say that students say they're afraid when they see the police, but we have not heard that from any of our students. And also, I would also, another thing for me, the argument that, because that is upsetting that a student waited 3 months to talk to somebody at the health center. I would say that even if we remove the SROs, that's not going to add more mental health care. So I would say that's a separate topic for us to bring up, and perhaps it is time that we do increase the amount of services, mental health services, and practitioners or clinicians in the buildings for our students. So I am definitely in favor of the SRO program staying. I'd like to see us update the
You muted yourself.
I know, I just muted myself. Update the MOU, and I am open to any of the other reforms as well, but I do think it's crucial that we do keep them in the schools.
I saw Molly's hand and then John.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm gonna take my hand down here. So I'm glad that you had said early on that we are able to vote for multiple things. I'm in favor of completely revamping the model that Middletown has to make it something that's unique here to Middletown Public Schools. What that model is exactly, I think needs more looking into. And so I'm going to be voting on taking some time to do more research. As Principal Gonzalez said, we have not heard from a wide array of students, and I don't think this was the right forum to hear from those students. And so I think that's going to take a little bit of time to gather that information. But I think there are a number of different models out there that we can look at or create something totally new. So I think I'm going to be voting in terms of re-looking at this and taking some time to think about something that we can create here in town that is going to work for both Middletown Public Schools, the PD, and the students. Thanks.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate you calling on me. Monday morning, I arrived at school, the summer school. I teach at Maloney High School, and I got roped into doing summer school, which is, no, it's fun, but putting it down. And I had to meet with the SRO right away because 2 kids ran away the night before. And, you know, I don't know the kids that well because it's only the second week. But these officers, once the SRO was an assistant, are helping to look for the kids. And we were able to find someone that knew where the kids were because they saw the officer in the computer lab where I was. And then the officer SRO spoke to the young lady. They found the kids. They brought them home. And then by Wednesday, today, they were back in class. And that's just like a little thing that I see a school resource officer do. I mean, you know, I do agree with the person that spoke about mental health. I mean, all school budgets are very, very large. And after Adam Lanza, the state of Connecticut was pushing for more mental health into the schools. But once again, that's a different issue. I agree with that. But my vote will be to keep the SRO with a new MOU. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Lisa, is there space for me to jump in?
Yes.
I guess if we're declaring votes, you know, my vote would be to continue the SRO program, but you know, I think that we have to do this under a youth-centered model, and really making sure that our SROs are trained in youth development, understanding behavior, understanding trauma, and yeah, it's honestly the same training that I feel like all folks working with young people and everybody in the school needs to fully understand, because I think we do operate in an understanding of young people that is devoid of often of science and research and understanding behavior, and then effectively understanding how to change it. But I do think, you know, as someone who's also sat on the state's police and youth training, you know, it was a very police-centered lens of youth engagement. And I think we have to flip that script. I think if we're going to continue to do this work effectively, I think there is a broader worldview that we need to bring in. And I'm happy to be, as I have been over the last 15 years, a continued partner of the SRO process from Sergeant Porter down to the individualized SROs. But I think we need to be more intentional and imaginative in the work we're doing. And I don't think we've fully had a chance to have that process here. And really, I think we dropped the ball in terms of cultivating youth perspective in this issue. And I think to Molly's point, this is not the venue to do that. It's intimidating, it's overwhelming. It's that way for adults. I mean, I'll speak for myself. You know, it's one thing being in a Zoom meeting that's recorded and we know that it's being shared. And it's another thing to kind of put 15, 16, 17-year-olds in that space and talk about systems that have power and control over them. And I wouldn't think that's a place where young people as powerful as the ones that work with me often are, feel comfortable. And I think if we're a school district and a community that really values student agency, because I hear that word being used often, we don't bring that into the spaces that really matter, where decisions are made. And I think if we're going to walk the talk, we need to be more intentional and purposeful in doing that. And I do think that was a kind of a glaring hole in our process, because it was, you know, but I also understand the political pressure of such a kind of hot button issue that we needed to kind of do everything very transparently, and public spaces and Board of Ed and City of Middletown spaces require that. But we have to find a middle ground where I think we can do this work a little better. And I think I'll stop there, but thank you all.
Thank you, Diana.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Lisa, and everyone else. I, in my professional capacity, run a program through Wesleyan that visits schools across the state, and they offer comprehensive sex ed education. In a classroom with a health ed teacher present, they talk about consent and safe sex, and when allowed, they do condom demonstrations. And I tell this story to say that several years before I started even, that program used to go to Middletown High. And they were asked not to distribute condoms because that was against school policy, but they didn't realize that they couldn't do a condom demonstration. So they did one. And one parent, as far as I understand, one parent complained and said that they hadn't consented to their kid having that kind of education in a classroom, that they didn't feel comfortable with that. And my program was not asked to come back. And I've been at West 7-8 years now, and we've never been invited back because one parent was upset about the content that their kid was receiving in a school setting. And even though we know condoms are 99% effective at preventing unwanted pregnancies and STIs, we can prove that. There's enormous amounts of data on that. And even though we know that teenagers are teenagers and hormones are real, and most of us were also having sex in high school, we still don't make condoms readily available to them for the same reason that you mentioned, Lisa, because the perception of being safe is often sometimes more important than the reality of being safe. And so we're comfortable with students at the high school getting pregnant, some of them with STD outbreaks at the schools and having to treat those. We're more comfortable with treating the outcomes of unsafe behavior than we are with mitigating the risks. And I see this working in much the same way. We have no evidence that shows, maybe the national reports can slant either way, but I have nothing local to compare that to say, yeah, okay, well, this works here, but it doesn't work there. And my performance review every year, I have to actually give a report whether or not I think I did a good job that year. If it's something is contractually mandated that you report out on how a program is working and you don't do that, then you're actually in violation of that contract, as far as I see it. If at my job, I just tell my boss, hey, you know, I think I did a pretty good job. I got a handful of people here who say they really like working with me. I think that's good enough. That wouldn't be good enough for them. It's not good enough for me as a parent, and it's not good enough for me as a community member. When my kid was at McDonough and 5th grade, I had no idea that the DARE program was going to be a thing they were going to sit through. If I had my way, I would have preferred that information about substance abuse be talked to them by a mental health professional or someone who's trained in the mental health impacts of substance abuse, not by a person in a uniform whose very presence is a reminder that if you use drugs, you might go to jail. And if your family uses drugs, they might go to jail. And you're a bad person if you do this. And luckily, they didn't get through the whole manual. They only got through the first couple of pages. And I was like, all right, well, I have some unlearning to do and some re-educating to do here. I can manage this. And I asked them, like, why didn't you get through the whole book? And my kid told me at the time, the officer who ran the DARE program spent most of the time talking to the kids about how many guns he had, what kind of guns he had, his military time, if he had shot people or killed people. If the goal is gun and violence prevention, this is not it. Like, this is not it. In fact, what they told me, some of the kids in the class are really excited to hear about what kind of guns they had, right? The cops had. And so I'm concerned that what may be a perception of safety for y'all is actually a real danger to me and mine. And so I'm voting today to phase them out and replace them with mental health professionals who can actually do this work of community building, of relationship building, of restorative practice, of mediation, and not have armed officers in our schools in my presence, in the presence of my children. And if that's not an option, then I, like other parents, if I can opt out of an eye exam, if I can opt out of a hearing exam, if y'all are handing out condoms at a school, you would absolutely let me know and give me the option to opt out of that. I would like the option to opt out as a parent of color of interactions with the officers. And I think that one of the recommendations I made was to limit the scope of their programming to specific kids who either opt in or give me the option to not do that, because I don't want to do that. And it's my right to keep my kids safe the way I think they should be kept safe. And if you feel good about having relationships with officers, then you should, I guess, be allowed to do that. Whether the Board of Ed should be able to facilitate that relationship is a whole other question. I do disagree. But if y'all are going to overwhelmingly agree, then I want the option to keep my kid out of that. The last thing that I'll say is that whatever happens, whatever decision is made, I think our school system has a responsibility to actually inform parents about what a possible interaction with officers in their schools could look like. As a parent, I have no idea what happens if my kid is arrested at school. What are their rights to not be interrogated by an officer without my presence? What are their Miranda rights, right? Like, I think we have a responsibility to inform people, just like we do when we give the health education class in 4th or 5th grade, where we send a notice home and say, hey, we're not talking about sex, we're only talking about bodies. We have a responsibility as a district to say, hey, we're going to have officers in this school. Here's how they've been trained. Here's their scope of practice. And here's what your rights are as a parent. And here's what your children's rights are as a parent, if they should come face to face with one in a way. And here's where you can call if something has made you uncomfortable about that interaction. We don't do any of that right now. And so those are the things I'm voting for. Remove and replace with mental health professionals, phase out and replace with mental health support, and continue and allow the option to opt in to specified programming.
Thank you. I saw Roger's hand and then Sergeant Porter again.
Thank you, Dr. Loomis. And with respect to the study that you brought up, this is the second time this study has been brought before this committee. And I think it's important to actually put the study out there. The name of the study is The Presence of Armed School Officials and Fatal and Non-Fatal Gunshot Injuries During Mass School Shootings. And the school shootings were through 1980 to 2019, and it was published in February 16th of 2021. The one point that I have to make, and you failed to mention this, is the data in this particular study was said to be flawed by the peer review, and I believe by the PhDs who did the study, because it was open source data only. They used open source data, so there was somewhat a bit of a flaw there. Further, the only mention of school resource officers in the particular study was in the introduction of the study. Nowhere in the rest of the entire study did they mention school resource officers. The rate of increased death was 2.83 times higher, as you said, nearly 3, with armed guards present. And one of the final points that was made in this study that I haven't heard either, and I'll read it, this is a quote right from the study. The majority of shooters who target schools are students of the schools, calling into question the effectiveness of hardening school security and active shooter drills. Instead, schools must invest in resources to prevent school shootings before they occur. And I think we have to take into consideration to a degree that having SROs in the school, as we've talked about in the discussions, the SROs have had a positive influence in when violence is about to occur or is planned to occur in the school. They work with the administrators when they hear about these incidents. They try to insert themselves in the incidents to prevent the violence from escalating. And further, one may assume that when we started this discussion that I was 100% for the SROs. And I would tell you that's a false assumption on some people if you felt that way. When we started this conversation, I was somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning towards removing the SROs from the schools personally. But when I heard the dedication and the professionalism that is currently being done by our current SROs, when I heard the degree of supervision that is being currently used in the SRO by Sergeant Porter, I was extremely impressed. And back to the study, one quick point was the point you made, Doctor, is well taken, that the students did arm themselves for confrontation with an armed school guard. That is true. But the study doesn't draw a correlation to the areas and the types of weapons that are prevalent in the certain areas of the United States. So there's a lot of correlations that are being drawn in that study that I think really are problematic. So again, take the study for what it is. As we move forward tonight, I will be voting to continue the SROs in our school with a change to the MOU to try to bring it into the future of 21st century policing.
Thank you. After Sergeant Porter, then Justin.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to present back to Diana that if there is a program in the school that the police are administering, and the DARE program is a good program, in my opinion. I'm not a DARE instructor. There are supervisors that oversee the DARE program. But if there's an issue with the way a lesson plan was taught, there's mechanisms in place that can be complained about to the police administration, and we would handle it from within. If we don't hear about those complaints, they certainly won't be addressed. But as far as I'm concerned, the DARE program is still a great program and is still in effect in most schools throughout Connecticut. I'll add one thing. There is a way to opt out of these programs. You don't want your child to attend DARE? Tell the principal you don't want your child to attend DARE. It's that simple. Just like you mentioned condoms. I don't know where that correlates with this. If I don't want my kid in that lesson plan, you can opt out. I think it's as simple as that. That's all. I just wanted to point that out. There are mechanisms in place that you can complain about a program if you have evidence that you believe that a lesson plan has gone awry. And that's all I'll say about that.
I know I said Justin, but I feel like I should give Diana and then Justin.
Yeah, I just want to note that I absolutely did reach out to the principal twice about it and got nowhere. And I think that speaks to a systemic issue. I reached out to the principal because the principal was the person who was my contact. I had no idea who the officer was who was operating the program. And I asked, and I did not receive a name from the then principal. But I will say that it's hard to opt out of things you don't know are happening. And so as a parent, if I don't know what the scope of an interaction of an officer might be with my child, it's hard for me to say, I don't want them to do this, which is why I was saying we have a responsibility to tell people up front, here's folks who are not staffed by the district who are coming into your school, and not just necessarily police officers, but also any folks who might be working with my kids who are not Board of Ed staff, and saying, here's the scope of which they're going to be, like the things that they're going to be doing with your child, and giving folks the option to say, nah, I'm cool, I don't want that. I didn't have that. I didn't get a notice about that. If I did, and also I'm not also sure structurally, with the DARE program specifically, if that's a formal part of a mental or wellness component of a school class or something extra, those things are also unknown to me as a parent. So unless folks are going to be like, emailing all their principals in advance and saying, I need to know exactly who's going to be here when, I don't see how I could have opted out of that. But I'm suggesting that that's an option that we consider today, to give me the right to say, I'm cool with that. I don't want that.
And just one more point, I'll just mention that the SROs are not teaching the DARE program in most cases. They're separate from this division. They fall under another supervisor. But certainly there's a way to opt out of that. And Diana, if you wanted to call me offline, please feel free. And we can talk about, I can put you in touch with the SRO, not the SRO, the DARE supervisor. And you can have conversation with him. I believe that notice goes out to parents. Not 100% on that because it's not my program, but I believe that notice does go out. And that's on the DARE program.
Justin?
I think another place where I feel like the charge of this mission is siloed from, I think, broader, really important conversations. Is around the notion of like school safety and school discipline. And I think and school culture, and like the SROs themselves are part of a school climate, and like we're putting a lot of focus on school shooters and things like that, but like the connection between school shooters and exclusionary discipline, I think plays into this. And as we loosely talk about restorative justice being something that we want to do, I think we if we look at SROs and like try to reimagine this MOU exclusionary as like just a partnership between the school and the police, and not kind of interconnected and interwoven with how we develop safe spaces in schools, safe schools. Like I feel like so much of this is kind of like this, feels like a binary, like SROs in, SROs out. And it's not giving, so it's not giving us the kind of the full nuanced breadth that I think creating a good SRO program unique to Middletown could do. And I guess short story long, I don't know where that conversation comes into this process. Like you know, like where do we get to really think more deeply about that relationship? And because I just feel like we're kind of living in this very binary in or out universe, and I don't, and maybe that was our charge, but for me, that's where I'm struggling, because you know, there's a lot more to this conversation, to this narrative about kind of creating safe schools and highly functioning schools that we're just not getting into. And I think SROs can be in a school that's doing a really bad job with this. I think SROs can be in a school where they're doing a really good job with this. But broader conditions also need to be set for that condition to happen. And that's one of the places where I'm struggling in this conversation.
Thank you, Molly.
I wholeheartedly agree with Justin. I think that this particular committee isn't the right committee, but there has to be a real in-depth look at what this new way forward is going to be. And it's not as simple as in or out. I do always think there'll be a relationship between our law enforcement and our school district, but whatever this new way forward is going to be, it's going to take time, more information to look at. So I also, like Justin, I'm not sure, and I hope that this doesn't fall by the wayside. At what point can something like that occur? Because I do think it's very important.
Other comments? Diana and then Sergeant Porter.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify. I totally missed Sergeant Porter's point earlier about why condoms come into the conversation. I think I threw people off track because I said something that was sex related. But condoms came into the conversation for me because it took one parent with the right connections, perhaps the right last name, perhaps the right relationships, to complain about something that was a safety measure for all kids in that classroom, for that program to kick rocks. No conversation, no committee, no pickup of that conversation. To my understanding, to this day, we still don't offer kids at the high school access to condoms, even at the health center, even as the health center treats their STDs. But folks of color, starting from when this report really kicked off, the 10-year report with the high numbers of arrests that showed disproportionate rates for kids of color, and continuing with discipline stats that show a continuous disproportion of rates for kids of color being arrested, being disciplined, in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspensions, expulsions, all of that. None of that has mattered enough to say, hey, maybe let's take a look at discipline and policing in our schools. One person had all of this power to decide that, like, yeah, no, this isn't a thing we want to do anymore. But the weight of all of us, the kids with criminal records now, right? Potentially with criminal records, kids who have experienced cuffs on them, who have experienced arrest in front of their peers, kids who have been pushed out of our schools, right? Kids who've been labeled problem kids. None of those kids and none of their parents rise to the level of importance to say, hey, maybe we should actually just do a report on this and see how it's working. Not even a conversation about what are we doing and how are we doing it? And I think that was my point, that if we continue this program, I think it cannot be the program that it is, right? And I'm not going to support any continuation of the program as is or modified. But if y'all do, it cannot be this program, right? It cannot. And if it's going to be this program, then y'all need to take a real look in the mirror and ask, why are we comfortable with a list of roles and responsibilities that are not clear, at least not to me, exactly what it is that folks do, aside from being general assistance to people? What it is that we're comfortable with, a program that's not vetted, that's not been studied, that's not clear, with roles that are Nubius, whatever folks think they want it to be in a school, but because we like these folks, we continue that like a whole structure that has impact on a whole number of people. Every young person who spoke to us has said, hey, here's what I actually needed to be safe, and here's what y'all are doing. And those things don't match, right? So like, even if they've said, yeah, sure, they're cool people, I'm sure they do great things, but what they actually need are different things. So like, if the weight of all of that is not enough to say, well, at least let's take a look at this, then like, then what is this for? Like, what is this all really for? Because I'm not really like, I think we can say and speak to like all of our points for ad nauseum. I don't think I'm changing anybody's mind on here. And I don't think that we're gonna do anything different. I think just like people before me and generations before me, I'm gonna have to suck it up and do the best I can with my kids through the system and talk to them about how to keep their hands out of their pockets and keep their hats off their heads, just like every other family of color has to have that conversation with folks, right? So like, if this is what it is, and you're asking folks to be on these committees and telling them that their voice will be heard, but then when young people come and speak, and when parents of color come and speak, y'all are like, no, Mom, we actually really like those, like this program is really good, we think it works. Like, then okay, then what? Like, I'm starting here, I'm struggling to feel like it's a little bit moot, and I'm hoping that whatever decision that we make, like the board actually listens to the meetings or looks at our notes, because I think even a list of recommendations that people voted for is not going to be a complete picture of the things that we need to talk about.
Sergeant Porter.
Again, I'll just say that the police aren't in the schools to enforce minor school policy violations. I would like to just jump back on something that John Polino had mentioned. And he sort of reminded me when he talked about the kids that were out of school and the police officers helping them out. And I'm not going to mention the schools by name, but they're elementary schools in the district where you have behavioralists that address in-school issues with children. However, when a child with potential mental health issues runs from a school, leaves the school grounds with the behavioralist or the social workers in chase, it's the SROs that round the kids up. They're the ones that have the relationships with them and can say, hey, what are you doing? Come here a minute. Put their arm around them. Just come on, let's get back into the school. You know, and correct me if I'm wrong, the school has a hands-off policy. So when one kid is heading for the bridge or one kid is about to cross traffic in 66, 4 lanes of traffic, it's the SROs or the police officers that are stopping the child from injuring himself or herself. So I just wanted to put those out there. Those are real examples. These things really happened. And from what I can see in the 3 years that we have been in the elementary schools, we are making a difference. So you can put these minor school violations aside. That's not what we're doing. We're building relationships. That's it.
Justin?
If I may again, I'm sorry off camera because I'm trying to help my son with bedtime. But I think another thing that we really have to grapple with, right, is that we know for certain that this program can't be all things to all people. And people have different relationships with law enforcement. And I think it's going to be imperative that as more exploration needs to happen there, right? And I appreciate, Diana, what you are bringing to the space and the weight you have to carry to bring that. You know, and when we say things like, well, some students don't have good relationships, or maybe some students don't feel safe. we can't underestimate that and we can't undervalue that. And I don't fully know how to reconcile it because it's not my place to come up with a solution. It's our place to ask that question and hear what people need and then give them what they need. I want to make sure that we're not undervaluing the things that we are hearing and that this isn't we're not creating a zero-sum game by the decision that this group makes. And then that we end up with winners and losers because everybody is in a school. And school is a community and communities are not zero-sum games. And I don't fully know how to rectify that, but I think we have to be more cognizant and show more humility than I think we have shown in this process in examining that, because I think that's a real need that communities have, and I think it's a critical one.
I don't want to end discussion prematurely. It is 7:42, so
not my bedtime, right?
Before moving on to voting, if you have something burning that you definitely want to get on record before we vote, I will ask for those comments. All right, seeing no hands. Oh, Sergeant Porter.
I noticed that Mrs. Weiner isn't in the room, and she's our high school representative, the majority of students. Will there be a manner, because I believe that she's on vacation somewhere much nicer than here. Is there a way that she'll be able to vote?
So she did
gather principal comments.
She did email me, and I can thank you for reminding me of that. I will read her email into the record now. There it is. She said, I believe we should leave the program in place as is and update the MOU to ensure it accurately reflects the high standards we have for MPD in our schools. So that was Miss Weiner. She's having trouble joining this meeting because of being out of the country.
I'm glad she was able to make something and send it over to you, because I was concerned.
Yeah. All right, then I think it's time that we move to voting for the recommendations.
Lisa, can I ask a clarifying question? I apologize.
Yeah.
What is the final list of things that we're working off? I know folks chimed in, including myself. Was there an adaptation to that list, or is it the list that was originally sent out?
I will share my screen, and then everyone can see both the recommendations that we're voting on and the record of the votes. So as you can see, so I've numbered each recommendation, and I'm just going to create a little table, and I will do a roll call for each recommendation, and you can tell me yay, nay, or abstain, and I'll put your name in that column.
What's nay?
So we have keep the SRO program as is, keep the program as is while more research is done, keep the SRO program but update the MOU, keep the SRO program but update data reporting and oversight practices, keep the SRO program but expand training to include child development, trauma-informed practices, students with disabilities, mental health challenges, anti-racism, and implicit bias. Keep SRO program, expand training, limit scope of programming and interaction, and allow parents to opt in. Should that say opt out?
No, I specifically wrote opt in, but I think it could say either.
I'm gonna keep it as was shared. Keep SROs at middle and high school, but remove from elementary schools. Phase out SRO program as SROs get cycled out. Phase out SRO program as SROs get cycled out and replaced with mental health or restorative justice practitioners. Remove SROs from all schools. Remove SROs from all schools and replace with mental health or restorative justice practitioners. So those are the recommendations, and I'm just going to do a roll call for each one. And if you could just please tell me yay, nay, or abstain when I call your name, I will record it here and everyone can see that I'm recording your vote accurately. And I've got your names in alphabetical order, except I'm last as chair. So that's how I'm calling on people. Sergeant Porter, question?
I guess my concern is the training. I think that it's come up through the SROs and it's come up, if you could bring it down to that particular number item. I don't remember which one it was. Yeah, all this is covered in the academy through mandated training. So yeah, I don't know how you could expand it any more than that unless the school offers something that the rest of the faculty is going through, and perhaps the SROs can attend it. But the academy, and I think Roger
if I pee in my pants?
pointed all that out.
What'd you say?
Anyway, so yeah, I just think that they're getting all that. So to make that part of the vote here doesn't seem appropriate for me. They're getting that training.
So
If
made clear through these meetings.
if I can offer a clarifier, I think the training that they're getting through the academy is all police-centered training, right? Law enforcement centered training. And again, as somebody who's gone through the police and youth training around police and youth interactions, I think it's missing a critical voice and better understanding that work. And I think there's also, as Bill, you and I have talked online, offline, I think there's deeper training on restorative justice. I think there's deeper training on trauma and brain development and neuroscience at a level that's, I think, just well above and beyond probably what, some of this is just a couple hours at the academy. I'm talking like deep immersive work, like multiple day training on this. Again, that's also why my recommendation was to pull them out of patrol to make that available. But that, at least
I see where you're going with that.
That's the spirit of my recommendation.
And that goes along with any,
school-based
trainings that they hold at Middletown High School on weekends.
Yes.
The getting rid of the SROs isn't going to solve that problem. Yeah. Getting rid of the SROs isn't going to solve that problem, because now you want these specific, programs to be offered. You're not going to be able to offer them to the entire police department. But a select few officers that are assigned to the schools, yes, that this can be done. So I would vote in favor of that. I'm good with that. Dr. Loomis, we can go ahead.
Okay, I added youth-centered as a qualifier there. I hope that captures that. Okay, so keep SRO program as is. Molly?
I vote nay.
Jen?
Nay.
Justin?
No to that one.
Ms. Downer,
Nay.
Ms. Ford,
Nay.
Cheryl,
Sorry about that. Nay.
Roger,
Nay.
Beverly,
Nay.
Sergeant Porter,
I'm going to say nay with the caveat we enter into a new agreement.
John,
Nay, I echo Sergeant Porter.
and I'm voting nay. Keep program as is while more research is done. Molly,
Sorry, Lisa, I didn't get to vote nay on that one.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
And you can add Colleen to that as an A2, given the statement that you shared from her.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your help with that, everybody. Keep program as is while more research is done. Molly,
I vote yay.
Jen,
I was going to say nay, but I'm never opposed to research. I want to keep.
oh, I think you froze. I'll come back to Jen. Justin,
If we're adding
I can
qualifiers,
say yes to one and no to the other part. That's the problem why I'm struggling with answering this question.
I think Jen and I are trying to say the same thing. But I'm going to.
I'm going to vote nay for this one.
Also voting nay, but I like research.
Roberta,
Yes.
His real motion is to do well at ways as
Dolores,
Yay.
Cheryl,
Yay.
Roger,
Nay.
Beverly,
Nay.
Diana,
Nay.
Bill,
Nay.
John,
Yes, or yay.
I'm also voting yay. Keep SRO program, but update MOU. Molly,
Vote yay.
Yay.
Justin,
Yay.
Roberta,
Yay.
Dolores,
Yay.
Cheryl,
Yay.
Roger,
Yay.
Beverly,
Nay.
Diana,
Nay.
John, Sergeant Porter,
Yay. Overwhelming.
John,
Yes or yay?
I am also voting yay. Keep the program but update data reporting and oversight practices. Molly,
I vote yay.
Jen,
Yay.
Justin,
Yes.
Roberta,
Yes.
Dolores,
Yay.
Cheryl,
Yay.
Roger,
Yes.
Beverly,
Nay.
Diana,
Nay.
Sergeant Porter,
Yay.
John,
Yes. Thank you.
voting yay. Keep the SRO program, but expand training to include youth-centered training on these different topics. Molly,
I vote yay.
Jen,
I feel like I have to know where the training's coming from. I wish I knew more about the training to vote on this. Is it coming from the police department? Is it coming from the Middletown public school system? So I'm going to abstain, please. Thank you.
Justin,
Yes, please.
Roberta,
Yay.
Dolores,
Yay.
Cheryl,
Yay.
Roger,
I vote yes.
Beverly,
Nay.
Diana,
I think this is training every officer should have with Justin, but I'm going to abstain because this option continues the SRO program.
So Lisa, I'm sorry, is it definite that this training would be with Justin?
I don't think you can say that.
I'm at least offering it. I don't.
Oh, well, that would then, if the training is from you, then I would say yay. I just didn't know who was providing it and what that training would look like, so I felt like I couldn't answer that. But if it is coming from you, then my answer would be yay.
yeah, I'm not sure that we can.
Okay, we'll leave it as is. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
I think the clear takeaway is that people like me, and and that we've spoken into the universe, so it has to happen.
I think not only do they get this from the academy, but if they also get it through Justin's group and maybe sessions at the school, I'm fine with that, as long as it doesn't take them out of the schools every week, because then it serves no purpose to have them there. So I'm good with it. I guess it wasn't my turn.
It was your turn. John? John, are you still there? Maybe his connection, he may have lost John. I will vote yay. Keep SRO program, expand training, limit scope of programming and interaction, and allow parents to opt in. Molly?
I'll vote yay on this.
Nay.
Justin?
Yes.
Roberta?
Are we allowed clarification on what limit the programming means?
Again, I don't think we can, we don't have specifics and we're not in the position to create those specifics.
If I can comment, I don't know if that's allowable, but I think the question
No.
is too ambiguous. And
Well, I would just say this is what people have had to consider for the week. And so if people aren't comfortable voting
Yay.
nay, then to abstain. Dolores?
Yay.
Cheryl?
Nay.
Roger?
I vote no simply because I think an opt-in, opt-out is just unworkable from an operational standpoint.
Beverly?
Nay.
Diana?
I vote yes on this one. Our current program is also unclear to me and we're cool with continuing that. So I think it should be up to the board to decide what expanded training and limited scope of programming looks like, not me.
Sergeant Porter?
I'm a nay.
John?
No, nay.
I'm a yay. Keep SROs at middle and high school, but remove from elementary schools. Molly?
I vote yay on this one.
Nay. Nay.
Justin?
I will vote, which is happening obviously in real time in my mind. Nay.
I'm sorry, I have to plug my computer in. Okay, sorry about that. Roberta?
Abstain?
Dolores?
Nay.
Cheryl?
Nay.
Roger?
Nay.
Beverly?
Nay.
Diana?
Nay.
Sergeant Porter?
Nay.
John? Oh. I'm a yay. Phase out SRO program as SROs get cycled out. Molly?
I'm going to abstain for this one only because I want to wait for more research and information to come out about what should be done with the program.
Nay.
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 Yay.
Yay.
Nay.
Did John come back?
Nay, nay, sorry, not no or nay.
I am yay. Phase out SRO program as SROs get cycled out and replaced with mental health or restorative justice practitioners. Molly?
I'm going to abstain again because I need to know more.
Nay, but for the record, I support more mental health workers in schools.
I am going to vote yes, but because I will always vote for more restorative justice in our schools and community.
Same as Jen. Nay, but I support more mental health workers in our schools.
Abstain.
Nay. Same, I do support mental health workers, but I don't think that it's connected at this point.
Roger?
I vote no.
Yay.
Yay.
You know where my vote is. It's a no. If the school board would like to fund additional mental health workers, I'd be fine with that in combination with the SROs.
John?
Nay or no, same with the social workers or mental health practitioners. We definitely need them.
Yay. Remove SROs from all schools. Molly?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Nay.
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 I vote nay.
A yay.
Yay.
Again, yay. I'm sorry, nay.
John,
Nay or no?
I'm yay. Last one, remove SROs from all schools and replace with mental health or restorative justice practitioners. Molly,
I'll go to abstain again.
Nay, but for the record, I completely support having more mental health or restorative justice practitioners in the schools.
I recognize this is again a largely symbolic vote, but if we are doing a binary, I will always vote on behalf of more restorative justice. So I am a yes.
Nay, I do support mental health workers and restorative justice practices. I just don't think the SRO should be removed.
Nay.
Sharon,
Nay.
Roger,
I vote no. These are two separate budgets. The Board of Ed has no funding in their current budget for that.
Yay.
Diana,
Yay.
Sergeant Porter,
I'm a nay.
John,
Nay or no?
and I'm a yay. I just want to go back, John, to keep SROs at the middle and high school, but remove from elementary schools. We didn't get your vote for that one.
Oh, nay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yes, Sergeant Porter.
Sorry, I feel like I'm always raising my hand. I'm that kid in class. I know that we're missing some folks here. Is it just Mrs. Weiner? Or is there others that are missing from this vote tonight as well?
Missing all the young people.
All the
of
young
them.
people, all three.
Okay, I wasn't sure that, I thought that they were invited guests like the SROs, but okay. I just want to ensure that they, that our folks and have an opportunity to vote. Mrs. Weiner will be able to see the way we voted and add her additions to it, as well as the young folks.
If we could, based on her statement, I think she also said updating the MOU.
Correct.
Again, I think without her knowing it, some of these questions are so ambiguous, it's going to be difficult without her actually seeing.
I'm just going to add her to the yay for updating the MOU based on her statement.
And it seems like these questions are going to advise the Board of Ed as opposed to present a formal recommendation, correct? It appears that the way we structured this.
Yes. Well, this has not been an easy process. I want to thank everyone for showing up and for participating. This is hard work, and I hope that we can continue to have a conversation around school safety and how do we create a culture of school safety that feels good for all of our students. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Lisa, before we adjourn, I'd like to thank you publicly for your work on this, for taking the minutes, for coordinating the meetings, for getting the group together. I know it was a lot to a full plate that you already have. So thank you for your time and energy on this.
I think the room would echo that.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Good job.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Jen.
Second by Beverly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.